Hey there guys, as we have moved into the new year, I thought it would be interesting to look back at the content that we got in 2018 and more importantly, I want to look forward to what we can expect from Guild Wars 2 in 2019. If you are considering playing Guild Wars 2 this year, this could be an interesting video for you. Based on what we have seen in the past years, I want to cover some things that we can expect in 2019 and speculate on content and announcements that might be coming. Some topics that I cover in this video are still uncertain and therefore take it all with a grain of salt. Last year I had covered some general thoughts on why you should play Guild Wars 2 in 2018. Basically this video sums up answers to very common questions and concerns about the game. For example, the endgame of Guild Wars 2 and if the game is paid to win. Go check out that video if you aren't playing Guild Wars 2 yet. Personally, I think it is still very relevant to this day. As usual, if you want to support me, don't forget to give this video a like, subscribe, comment and watch this video all the way to the end. Timestamps of each segment can be found in the description of this video. Let's have a look into the crystal ball and see what Guild Wars 2 has in store for us. We're going to start off with an obvious one, the living world. Be wary, this segment might contain spoilers of Guild Wars 2's story. You can skip to the timestamp that is displayed in this video to skip the spoilers. The living world has been running for quite some time now. I believe it all started rather soon after the release of the original game in 2012. However, no exact date can be found. The story of Living World Season 3 has led up to the latest expansion, Path of Fire. A few months after the release of the expansion, the story continued with Living World Season 4. In 2019, the Living World is going to start off strong with the finale of Living World Season 4 titled All or Nothing. Spoiler warning ahead, Living World Season 4 was mainly focused at stopping the Elder Dragon Kralkatorrik from destroying the world. We are left to wonder what is going to happen in the season finale. As a user on Reddit pointed out, the last mission of the Guild Wars 2 original story was called Victory or Death. In this story instance, the player managed to kill the Elder Dragon Zaitan. All or Nothing and Victory or Death bear a strong resemblance to one another if you look at their name. So we might see the death of the Elder Dragon Kralkatorrik in this one. This would be an interesting turn of events though. Every Elder Dragon so far has died in the original game or in a subsequent expansion. This would be the first time that the death of an Elder Dragon would be in a temporary free piece of content. If we put the story aside, we're also going to visit an old map from the original Guild Wars, Thunderhead Peaks. Well actually, in the original Guild Wars this was a mission called Thunderhead Keep. This is where the living story is going to take place. As an avid player of the original Guild Wars, I'm always excited to visit areas from the original game. Next to this, we are also getting new upgradable weapons, which I hope are going to last and be further upgradable in the next living story seasons. Anyway, the devs aren't going to let us wait for long, since this episode is planned for the 8th of January. After this finale, ArenaNet has decided to move on directly from Living World Season 4 to Season 5. This means that there is not going to be an expansion after Season 4, which would normally be the case. However, the developers are focusing on pushing the boundaries of their game and the story. So I think Season 5 is going to have a stronger story, interesting gameplay and new features that also could belong into an expansion. I think ArenaNet once said something similar but I couldn't find it. If you happen to know where it's from, let me know in the comments. Moving on to our next segment, a new expansion. To put this plain and simple, I do not think that we are going to see an expansion this year. However, I do think that we are getting the announcement of a new expansion halfway through this year. Why do I make these assumptions? Well, I think the living story, as previously mentioned, is going to get bigger and of even better quality than the last seasons. Expansions take considerably longer to create. If they follow the same route as the last expansions, then we're most likely going to see more elite specializations and perhaps another profession. Heart of Thorns was released in 2015, Path of Fire in 2017, and looking at the 2-year window, we should get an expansion this year. However, Living World seasons usually consist out of 4 to 6 episodes, which get released every 3 months. So the full release of the Living World season would take about 12 to 18 months and usually that would lead up to an expansion. Therefore, I would assume that we won't see an expansion until the end of Season 5, which starts in January. It is possible that the expansion will come during a Living World season, but I think this is highly unlikely since this hasn't happened before. Don't get me wrong, I would love to see an expansion sooner than later. As we do not have a clear lead on where this possible expansion is going to take us, I think it would be set in Kantha. Over the last months, I have seen several threads on Reddit discussing a possible Cantha expansion. But why Cantha? Right now, there are barely any ties or leads that point to Cantha, except for a brief mention or minor Easter eggs that can be found throughout the story of the game. But if we take a look at what Cantha has to offer, it might be an interesting place to go to. The lore itself is already there and can be built upon. Cantha was introduced to us in Guild Wars Factions. This continent had an Asian style and was divided into several pieces. There was Xingzhe Island, the starter area, which resembles a monastery with a lot of green, wildlife and mountains. Next to that there was Kaineng City. This was a city inspired by a real city in Hong Kong named the Kowloon Walled City. And last there were the Kursik and Luxon factions. These two factions were at war with one another and had their own territory. The Kursiks lived in the Echo Vault Forest, a dense and mystic forest, and the Luxons lived on the Jade Sea, a sea turned into jade by Shiro Takachi. You might remember Shiro from the legendary assassin stance that the Revenant can use. He was also the villain in the story of Guild Wars Factions. According to the Guild Wars 2 wiki, Cantha was isolated from the rest of the world by Emperor Usoku, and I think it would be an interesting place to visit as an outsider. So I wonder if the developers are going to work on that. The next thing that we're most likely going to see is profession balancing. This might be another obvious one, but I think it's going to be of bigger impact than the past updates. Most endgame team and squad compositions usually have a druid to heal and a chronomancer to provide quickness and alacrity. On the 11th of December, the devs made some interesting changes to the chronomancer that would make it harder to share boons with your allies. ArenaNet stated that this change was not intended to remove the chronomancer from the meta, but rather to give other professions a more prominent role in team compositions. The Chronomancer is still the profession that is commonly used to provide boons. However, I do think that a Firebrand or perhaps another profession can support the Chronomancer in fulfilling this job. Druid is also a commonly used elite specialization. Currently, the Druid is the only healing profession that is commonly accepted by most of the players. However, I do think that there are going to be buffs to other professions so they can heal just as effectively as the Druid can. For example, the Scourge and the Firebrand have been mentioned by the community as professions that could fulfill this role, but currently they lack the boon output and the direct healing that the Druid can provide. For DPS players, I doubt that there is going to be many changes. Most DPS professions have a build available that can effectively fulfill the DPS role and keep up with other professions. Elementalist remains a top tier DPS profession since the release of the game, with the Revenant and the Thief getting close to the Elementalist. I would love to see some more Rangers and Mesmers fulfilling the DPS role instead of a support role. I'm curious if this is going to change in the future. If you want to know more about professions, check out my dedicated video on this topic. This basically sums up what I am expecting for Guild Wars 2 in 2019. There are some other things that I would love to discuss and that have been discussed by other content creators and players. This is all possible content that could be coming this year, but it is unlikely. However, I want to take a minute and go over these topics. The first thing I would love to discuss is more group content. Two other content creators, Doror and Commentate, have mentioned this in either one of their videos or live streams. With more group content, I do not mean another Fractal or another meta event, but something completely different. I would love to see some high risk, high reward endgame content. As I've stated in other videos, I'm talking about something similar along the lines of the Underworld, the Domain of Anguish and the Fissure of Woe that can be found in the original Guild Wars. These were instances where if a player would die or fail their job, the whole party would be kicked out of the instance and they had to redo all their progress. However, Guild Wars 2 has Fractals, Raids and Dungeons as their endgame content right now, and I would assume that we will see more of those three types of content instead of another endgame concept. But hey, one can hope. The second thing I would love to discuss is a new race. A new race through the living story would be awesome. There has been some speculation about this for many years now. Maybe we would see the Kodan, the Largos or even the Tengu. I would specifically love to see more of the Tengu. This bird-like race has been around for years and are also present in the original Guild Wars. The city or settlement this race resides can be found in Caledon Forest, which is also the Sylvari starting area. Although a new race would be nice, it is also very unlikely. All the armor sets that we currently have in the game are specifically made and adjusted for the races that we currently have. Recreating all those armor sets for a new race would take an enormous amount of time. The third and last thing I want to discuss is a new profession. It is unlikely, but not impossible. 2019 marks the 4th anniversary of the Heart of Thorns expansion, which introduced us to the Revenant profession, meaning it has been 4 years since a new profession. It would be nice to have a different profession and experience the game with another playstyle. For me, Starting a completely new character in Guild Wars 2, or any other game for that matter, feels like playing a totally new game. Everything feels new, fresh, and you have to figure out how everything works. I love that. With a new profession also comes balance. A new profession would completely change the established meta and could possibly force players to change their armor, profession and playstyle to fit this new meta. ArenaNet has stated on numerous occasions that they are not a big fan of gear treadmills or ever-changing metas for that matter. A new profession must be introduced with care while preserving the current meta. Therefore, a new profession might be unlikely, but is not completely off the table. Most of the original Guild Wars professions have been integrated into Guild Wars 2 professions. For example, the Guardian in Guild Wars 2 has features from the Monk, Ritualist and the Paragon from the original Guild Wars. However, Dervishes, another profession from the original Guild Wars, can be found in Isten. This was a profession that could attune to the gods and deal damage or heal based on their attuned god. An interesting profession. I'm wondering if we will ever see them playable in Guild Wars 2. Alright, this basically sums up everything I had in mind for 2019. Most of these things have been on my mind for a longer period of time, especially the last 3 topics I had discussed. I don't know what 2019 has in store for me and for Guild Wars 2, but I'm planning on sticking around for this journey and upload more Guild Wars 2 content. Starting off with a new Living World episode that is coming real soon. Stay tuned by subscribing to this channel and don't forget to leave a like and share this video with your guildies. For now, I wish you all a wonderful new year and I hope to see you all in the next one. Thanks for watching and peace.